Brazilians are here.
Vini Jr. again. Vinicius Jr. lashes in the equaliser. Vinicius Jr. slips it through and then it's fired.
It's above gun and Vini Jr.'s there to head it home.
Pass through, what a goal, Martinelli!
Compared to vintage Brazil teams, the current squad has looked more Sunday League than Samba, and there was a point when even World Cup qualification hung in the balance. It wasn't until Carlo Ancelotti took charge last May that stability returned and they secured their place. And if there's anyone capable of guiding this inconsistent Brazil side on a deep tournament run, it's him. Yes, Haiti may be ranked 87th in the world, and Scotland are competitive at best, but the pressure on Brazil was already sky high after a frustrating draw with Morocco, when a forward line led by Igor Thiago looked painfully blunt. But with Cunha instead lining up alongside Vini Jr. and Lucas Paqueta, Brazil suddenly looked like Brazil again. Sharp, fluid and dangerous. But surely they can't win the World Cup, or can they? This is the story of Brazil's legacy built on greatness, a downfall years in the making, and why they could have a very real shot at redemption this year. It's been 24 long years since Brazil last lifted the World Cup in 2002. The same gap that separated Pelé's iconic 1970 side from the 1994 triumph in the USA. Now the most successful nation in World Cup history returns to North America, with everything on the line. Either they will win their long-awaited 6th star, or their drought will stretch to 28 years by 2030. Brazil have never gone that long without a world title. Yes, there were 28 years between the first World Cup in 1930 and Brazil's breakthrough in 1958. But the Seleção only truly began believing when they hosted the tournament in 1950. From that first title onward, Brazil didn't just win, they defined how football should look. Fluid passing, daring dribbles, joy in every touch. The yellow shirt became a global symbol of the Jogo Bonito, or beautiful football. The second crown followed quickly in 1962, while the disappointment of '66 lasted only 4 years before the 1970 team, televised globally for the first time, sealed Brazil's status as football royalty and Pelé as its eternal king. But here's the key difference between the two 24-year droughts. The first never truly felt like a decline. In 1974, Brazil was still adjusting to life after Pelé and hit a brick wall in Cruyff's revolutionary Netherlands side. In '78, they returned home unbeaten with their heads held high after being edged out only on goal difference. In '82, they enchanted the world despite not winning the title, much like the Hungarians in '54 or the Dutch in '74. Losing to France on penalties in 1986 was painful but not shameful. And honestly, who could have stopped Diego Maradona that year? The exit to Argentina in 1990, on the other hand, was a genuine heartbreak, but it only fueled the hunger that led to redemption in 1994. Between 1970 and 1994, there was frustration, but never an identity crisis. And the country could still look in the mirror and see its idols lighting up packed stadiums at home, the heartbeat of the Seleção echoing through its own domestic game. However, that began to change after the 1995 Bosman ruling, when Europe's doors swung open and South America's brightest stars left for good. The talent remained Brazilian, but increasingly the stage and the very soul of their game shifted elsewhere. By the way, if you're enjoying the video so far, we'd be incredibly grateful if you subscribed. Your support helps us grow and continue creating the content you love. By 2006, more than 80% of Brazil's World Cup squad was playing in Europe. But at the time, nobody really cared, as everyone was too busy freaking out over the Avengers-level lineup they had assembled. Ronaldinho was the best player on the planet. Ronaldo had been the best of the previous era, and Kaká would soon claim the same crown. Add Adriano, Dida, Cafu and Roberto Carlos, and it was the most star-studded Seleção since 1970. For those who didn't watch it or weren't even born yet, 2006 looked like a golden generation. But for those who did, unks like me, the team's performances felt strangely empty, and the quarter-final exit to France wasn't just defeat, but an exposure of their lifelessness laid bare by Zidane's brilliance. In response, the Brazilian FA turned to Dunga, captain of that pragmatic 1994 World Cup winning side, to restore discipline. But while he delivered a Copa America and Confederations Cup, the flair that once defined Brazil slowly gave way to cold rigidity under his guise, especially after Ronaldo retired and both Ronaldinho and Adriano were cast aside. That shift was clearest in 2010, when Neymar and Ganso, two electrifying youngsters tearing it up with Santos, were left out of the squad for South Africa in favour of more physical profiles. After comfortably beating their opponents on their way to the last 8 against the Netherlands, Brazil unravelled in a rush of mistakes and, ironically, indiscipline. It seemed merely swapping joy for control had not restored success. It's hard not to wonder how far that generation could have gone. In 2010, Kaká and Adriano were only 28 and Ronaldinho was 30, but injuries ravaged Kaká and he quickly faded from the national setup, while Adriano and Ronaldinho drifted away from professionalism, just as Messi and the other Ronaldo began redefining it. That left Neymar, Brazil's next true superstar, carrying the full weight of a nation far too early, without the mentors or structure to help him bear it. From that point on, the imbalance was impossible to ignore. And between 2014 and 2022, the narrative of Brazil became Neymar and 10 others. The talent pool was still rich, but there was no equal presence beside him. And a nation once defined by a constellation of icons now revolved around a single star. The identity crisis finally hit full meltdown at home in 2014. The 7-1 against Germany in the semi-final wasn't just a defeat, it was national trauma, the kind that made the internet crash as even porn sites got overwhelmed by the highlights. Neymar's injury absence that night had subsequently created a myth that he was untouchable, indispensable. But in truth, his World Cup story has been shaped as much by absence as impact. Injured in the 2014 semi-final, not fully fit in 2018, and the decisive penalty that was never taken in 2022. Overall too, his career has mirrored that of Ronaldinho's more than Messi's. Flashes of genius interrupted by injuries and inconsistency. Since 1994, the quarter-final stage has thus become Brazil's ceiling, and the only time they climbed higher, it ended with PG-13 content. The current World Cup cycle has been fraught with managerial instability, as an interim spell under Fernando Diniz quickly gave way to a brief and underwhelming tenure for Dorival Jr. Last March, Dorival had lost only his second match in 16 games in charge, but a brutal 4-1 defeat to arch-rivals Argentina in a qualifier, coming on the heels of a dreadful 2024 Copa America campaign, was the final straw. A few weeks later, Carlo Ancelotti arrived as the supposed saviour, and as the first foreigner ever to lead Brazil at a World Cup, his appointment, historic as it is, symbolised just how far the prestige of Brazilian coaches had fallen. In fact, roughly half of the managers in Brazil's top flight today are foreigners. So where have the Brazilian coaches gone? If Argentine or Uruguayan managers can coach top clubs in the Champions League, why has no Brazilian done so since Luis Felipe Scolari's spell at Chelsea well over a decade ago? In truth, Brazilian coaches have long been seen as tactically outdated. In that light, the current direction feels less radical and more inevitable. After all, Brazil's players are now, in many ways, European footballers, shaped by European academies, tactics and even lifestyles. So appointing a European coach who understands that reality isn't a betrayal of traditions, it's adaptation. And when that coach happens to be Don Carlo, adaptation starts to look a lot like ambition. Ancelotti arrived fresh from trophy-laden spells at Real Madrid and with deep ties to Brazil's elite. And long before Madrid, he had already worked alongside Brazilian stars at AC Milan and most famously moulded Kaká into a Ballon d'Or winner in 2007. He even knows the current generation inside out. Casemiro, Vinicius Jr., Rodrigo, Eder Militão and even Richarlison, whom he coached at Everton and nearly brought to Madrid, how funny that would have been, are among more than 30 Brazilians to have played under him. Few managers truly understand both the tactical habits and the personalities of Brazil's core like Ancelotti. True, both he and you share the same managerial experience at international tournaments. But what he brings is the perfect balance of tactics and man management that can inspire any inconsistent team to greatness. For all the noise around them, this Brazil squad is actually pretty decent in their 4-2-3-1 setup. Yet for all the star power, Ancelotti's side are not free scoring. Across 18 qualifiers, they managed just 24 goals, with Barcelona's Rafinha the only player to hit 5 or more. Instead, the Seleção are patient. They concede possession, control space, and wait for the right moment to strike.
This version of Brazil, a counter-attacking version of Brazil, I think is their best in terms of how they're going to go about winning games in the World Cup.
The margins are often slim, but with the world-class Alisson in goal, even the narrowest of leads feel secure rather than fragile. At centre-back, Gabriel and Marquinhos bring leadership and big-game pedigree, Serial winners who even faced each other in this season's Champions League final, with Bremer a dependable alternative. Since the days of Marcelo and Dani Alves, Brazil haven't quite produced fullbacks of the same calibre. Still, Douglas Santos and Danilo provide enough balance and invention, while Bruno Guimaraes and a resurgent Casemiro will protect that backline like a condom. Up front, the options are plentiful, even with Rodrigo, Estevão and now Rafinha sidelined through injury. Brazil rely on a fluid front line of Vinicius Jr., Paquetá and Cunha, with a supporting cast of Martinelli, Ryan, Igor Thiago, Luis Henrique and Endrick adding depth and danger. The 19-year-old must have feared for his place in the Brazil roster last Christmas, having been a permanent resident of the Real Madrid bench, but a productive loan spell at Lyon has revived him, and in Estevão's absence he offers directness and unpredictability down the right flank. The decision to leave out João Pedro still feels harsh, as he was Chelsea's top scorer last season despite the team's struggles. Yet it is Neymar who takes the spot, whether on merit or reputation is still up for debate.
Neymar Jr. Santos.
Simply put, the players love him. The players want him there. And if you're Carlo Ancelotti, yes, okay, maybe it was part politics, but if he didn't pick Neymar, there'd be riots in the streets of Rio. Brazil doesn't look like Brazil without Neymar.
Could his World Cup redemption arrive in a supporting role this year, or a guiding force like Messi was for Argentina in 2022? More likely, his role will be quieter. Perhaps the end of Neymar dependencia is what Brazil truly need to bring about a storied ending. Unlikely maybe, but in football, nothing is impossible. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe for more content like this. Also, don't forget to hit the notifications bell so you never miss a beat. And with that, we'll see you in the next video.